4 out of 9 Supreme Court justices unambiguously voted to give Trump the ability to unilaterally alter the Constitution of the United States. 4 of them. 4 of them. Kind of a weird parlance, I think. Fox News frames this as a major loss for Trump, which I think is interesting because normally they never say that. It makes me wonder why they feel comfortable doing it here. I'm not entirely sure. But yeah, no, it's psychotic. The constitutionality of birthright citizenship is not arguable. It is a just very straightforward read of the Constitution. The fact that 4 judges read that and said, I think Trump should get to undo it. Very spooky. It's an illegitimate organization, the Supreme Court. Gang of, unelected thugs put in there for life. Any serious democratic charge to fix the country has to involve the neutering of the current court.
Shannon, we have another decision, and it's a big one. It has to do with birthright citizenship. It was an executive order that President Trump, on day 1 of his second term in January 2025, signed the executive order. It was immediately challenged, and now we can tell you that the U.S. Supreme Court has ruled against President Trump's order to limit birthright citizenship.
Honestly, treason conviction should be on the table. I think what the Supreme Court judges here, the dissenting judges, have done is treason. I do think that 100%. Their job is to interpret the Constitution of the United States, but I'll put it this way. In any other job, this degree of, we'll call it incompetence, could be met with criminal liability. For instance, a doctor, Hippocratic oath, they're supposed to heal you, If you went under at a dentist's office because you were getting a root canal done and you woke up with all of your limbs dismembered and the dentist said, I thought that'd be fine. I thought that'd be fine. And I thought you'd like it. I thought you would like it. If they pulled that, actually, honestly, given how many releases they make you sign at, doctor's offices these days, maybe you wouldn't be able to. But I think we could all agree that would warrant some kind of lawsuit, right? I feel like that's the equivalent of what we're seeing here. It is a level of, again, we'll call it incompetence. In reality, the conservative judges are just obeying their president. Completely beyond the pale. Completely beyond the pale. Do we agree these judges should be arrested? Well, if they committed treason, yeah.
Citizenship. Shannon, we have talked for some time about the president feeling that he would not win on this one. The question is, why not?
Should be noted the decision is de facto 6-3. Gorsuch's dissent argued children of illegal immigrants should be citizens, but not the children of literal tourists. Irrelevant. The Constitution is extremely clear on what naturalized citizenship means. This pithy half dissent is still a rejection of the constitutional text.
Okay, right off the bat, it says children born in the United States to parents unlawfully or temporarily present are, quote, subject to the jurisdiction of the United States and are citizens at birth under the 14th Amendment's Citizenship Clause. So look how this broke down. As we expected, the Chief Justice wrote this opinion. Justices Sotomayor, Kagan, Barrett, and Jackson joined. Jackson has a concurring opinion in which Sotomayor joins. Justice Kavanaugh files an opinion concurring in the judgment and dissenting in part. The dissent comes from Justice Thomas. He is joined by Gorsuch, Alito, and then Justice Gorsuch apparently has his own dissenting opinion. So it is what we expected after the arguments here, and it looks like a bit of a split, but enough of a plurality coming together to say that the executive order that the president issued very quickly upon taking office is no good, and that if people are here, subject to the jurisdiction thereof includes people who are here illegally. Writing for the majority, Chief Justice Roberts says this: citizenship then and now was the right to have rights to freely participate in our political community.
I expected an 8-1 decision with Thomas being predictably fascist. This was, again, 4 of the 9 Supreme Court justices have confirmed that they will support Trump no matter what he does, including direct changes to the Constitution. Trump could very well run for a 3rd term off this. If they're willing to break with him on this, then he could very, very well run for a 3rd term.
About the 14th Amendment, the framers of the 14th Amendment extended that promise to every freeborn.
It's 3, not 4. It's 4.
Person in this land. That's a quote, and it looks like it's a quote back to some of the legislative debate about this in Congress. He says we keep that promise today. So a loss probably expected by the Trump White House, but it is official and it's a thick one. So we'll keep reading.
All right. Thank you so much. Let's bring in Jonathan Turley. President Trump went to this argument. It didn't go as they would like, and you have some thoughts as to why. Go ahead.
Well, this is exactly what some of us predicted after the oral argument. Chief Justice Roberts said rather pointedly when counsel noted...
Miller must hate this. I mean, again, why? The stage has been set. The Supreme Court, at least the conservatives on it, do not believe in the Constitution. The Republicans just need to pick up, a couple more seats, get rid of the rhinos, get rid of Barrett or whatever. They've won. I don't consider this a victory. A victory, not even a victory. If the Supreme Court had 9-0 ruled against Trump, I still wouldn't consider that a victory. Why? Because I don't consider it a victory when I order a drink at a bar and the bartender doesn't shit in my glass. Like, this is not... The bar has been lowered so fucking far. Now we're like, well... Don't worry, guys. By 1 vote, we narrowly avoided jurisprudence indicating that an executive order can overwrite the direct, unambiguous, unmisinterpretable word of the Constitution.
that things have changed in the citizenship area and how people become citizens. Roberts pointedly said, well, the Constitution hasn't changed, and that is reflected in this opinion. It is a roaring decision in favor of birthright citizenship as contained within the 14th Amendment. That is despite the countervailing evidence of some of the drafters of that amendment that they did not want this to be something that would cover birthright citizenship. Now, having said that, there are very good arguments on both sides here, good faith arguments. And I'm just reading through the Roberts decision today, but it is a very comprehensive and good faith argument. What is left here is a decision for the country as to whether it wants to examine a constitutional amendment. Some countries that have had birthright citizenship got rid of it because many of us believe it's an incredibly ill-considered policy. We can make...
Even if we were going to get rid of it, it would need to be via a constitutional amendment. Isn't it pretty clear in the Constitution over this? Yeah, it's pretty clear. The Republic is done. Sorry, folks. Gorsuch outlined how Congress can revoke the 14th through legislation, and Thomas had a meeting with Johnson in his private office last night. Yeah, I saw that. In case you want an indication of just how openly partisan the court is being, Justice Thomas was literally meeting privately with Mike Johnson last night. Totally beyond the pale. I mean, like, again, unfathomable in a functioning country that might be something you might see. But, you know, the idea of a Supreme Court justice just taking private partisan meetings with the House Majority Leader, absolutely ridiculous. But again, you know, whatever. Not great. Not good.
The last case is not conducted. But do you agree?
Birthright citizenship. Yeah, okay, look, yes, as a constitutional lawyer, I got lots of opinions on this. Okay, understand what the framers did, and when we added this to our constitutional order, I understood what the intent was. I think anybody who looks at this... Oh dear.
The decision is children born in the United States, parents unlawfully or temporarily present, are subject to the jurisdiction of the United States and are citizens at birth under the 14th Amendment Citizenship Clause. What's your reaction to that, Mr. Speaker?
Well, I need to read the opinion, okay? But obviously you could say that's a textualist, originalist view. However, I do think that this has been grossly abused in recent years, okay? And that is the case that was being made by the plaintiffs in the case, and we're very sympathetic to that because it is a serious problem. We have it's become a birthing tourism, they call it, a trend where people will just come and you just come onto the soil and have your child, and then they're able to avail themselves of the welfare state and everything else. It's
Oh yeah, the American welfare state.
Been abused. It's one of those things that was intended to serve a noble and important purpose and has been thwarted and overused and abused. And so I'm sure that we'll continue to look at that. I mean, I'm sure the conclusion from this opinion is going to be that you got to amend the Constitution to fix that. As we all know, it's a big challenge to amend the Constitution. It's only happened 27 times in our whole nation's history. And the reason is because you got to have 2/3 of both chambers of Congress and 3/4 of the states to ratify. It's usually at least a many years long process and very complicated. We'll see. I'm sure there's going to be lots of discussion about that. I will say I'm very disappointed in that outcome. I think it subjects the country to serious challenges going forward.
I don't think he's surprised at all by the outcome, but he has to pretend to be. Or, I don't know. He has to engage with this because Trump wants it, Miller wants it. Even if it passed, how would they enforce this, or would it only apply to future cases? Only future cases. But it would end it would mean that the executive now has the ability to overwrite the Constitution with executive orders, which is not great. Yeah, there will never be another constitutional amendment, at least not in America as it exists today. So they're either going to do this through legislation or through executive action, or not at all. The Supreme Court just barely avoided giving Trump the gun on this one. Not that it really matters. Again, it's such an unambiguous case.
That decision as well, but we're going to have that debate, and we're going to have to agree. We really haven't had a national debate on this. This has largely been contained within the court system.
There's footage of someone asking Clarence Thomas what he was doing meeting with GOP leaders, and he just laughs his ass off in her face. Well, yeah, because they're not keeping the theater going anymore. The theater that we've all been playing, where Democrats pretend to want to win and Republicans pretend to respect the rule of law, we're like super done with it at this point. They're not interested in keeping like the pantomiming up, the theater. So we just have to like watch them laugh as they fuck us all to death, unfortunately.
And it may be time for us as a country to decide how we define citizenship.
All right, 14th Amendment ratified in 1868. Back to Shannon Bream for the view from Justice Thomas, who was a dissenter here. Shannon.
Yeah, in his dissent, he gets to that point, Bill, that you're making there. The 14th Amendment was enacted in the wake of the Civil War, quote, with the one pervading purpose of securing equal citizenship for the freed slaves. He writes, it was enacted, as Justice Harlan wrote, to secure to a race recently emancipated the civil rights that other citizens enjoyed. So Thomas has always been about that was the purpose of the 14th Amendment. He goes on to say that the court, meaning the majority now, has repurposed the 14th Amendment to protect its own set of preferred rights that the Reconstruction Congress never contemplated.
It's just straightforwardly treason. The amendment is extremely clear on what it means. There's really no rule. There's no room for ambiguity. It's incredibly straightforward. Remember, the job of the Supreme Court is not to say what they want the law to be. It is to interpret the Constitution as it exists. And there's just no room for interpretation of this one. The fact that the case was even taken by the Supreme Court at all is an enormous insult to the Constitution. He was never a literalist or originalist. No, originalism was always fake. It was always a Federalist, Heritage Foundation, Federalist Society Heritage Foundation ploy at getting the Republicans the results they wanted over and over and over again under the pretense of being like the most American. These are the most American judges. They care the most about America and the most about what the Founding Fathers would have wanted. The wording here is just not ambiguous at all.
That cannot find support in the text. Today, the court does so by recognizing a constitutional right to citizenship for the children of all foreign birth tourists and illegal aliens. He uses very specific language there. Again, Justice.
How do you even prevent this? It seems inevitable in democracies. Liberal democracies. The Republican Party is not a product of sincere or genuine political activism at the grassroots level. It's entirely based on money and pedophilia. The Republican Party, as it exists today, literally only exists because they have so much power in media. That's it. There's no authentic, like all of their talking points, all of their initiative, all their momentum is done from the top down. Without money, without that power, they would have nothing. So yeah, if liberal democracy will always lead here.
Thomas adhering and agreeing with the government's argument, with which they made here very passionately, that the 14th Amendment was about protecting the children of freed slaves and not what we've come to understand it as. You see his language there.
Damn, that's crazy. Maybe the people who wrote the amendment should have specified that. Like they could have written in the amendment, this applies to the descendants of slaves, but they didn't. They didn't do that. They had Chinese in America back then. They knew perfectly well what this amendment would mean.
He mentions birth tourism. It came up in the arguments, and clearly that's a very big concern of the dissenters. We also have dissents by Justice Alito and others, so we'll read those as well.
All right, thank you so much. Let's bring in Hugh Hewitt, of course. He has the Hugh Hewitt Show and a Fox News contributor with his reaction this morning. Good morning, Hugh.
Good morning, Dana. My reaction this morning is I'm not surprised by any of these decisions. I would have agreed with, were I in the court, with all three of them. I think the Chief Justice has hit it out of the park on the birthright citizenship issue, and we finally have a decision that lays to rest this endless debate that text, history, and tradition, in fact, affirm if you're born.
We have their meeting notes. They directly say they knew Chinese workers would have kids who would be legal Americans by birth. Yeah. I guess I just consider it spiritually degrading to even have to make these arguments in the first place. We know they're lying. They know they're lying. At what point do they get arrested? For treason. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's just no, it's like the debate culture thing. Every Republican knows that they're just in it to fuck kids. Like, that's the entire, it's like, at what point you smugly, actually, if you read the meeting notes, you can find they had considered that. What is it? They don't care. They don't care. They don't know. It doesn't matter to them. I'm not blaming you. I'm not saying you're being annoying. I'm just saying, like, what's the point, man? What's the point in even allowing them to have a seat at the table?
United States, you're a citizen. I love Justice Kavanaugh's clarity on the boys and girls sports.
Not that a Democrat would do this, but if a Democratic president in Congress had a law overturned by the Supreme Court, couldn't they just ignore it? I mean, they could. Every federal judge that any case brought against the federal government, like it could be brought into court, and the federal judges would probably rule with acknowledgement of the jurisprudence set by the Supreme Court. I mean, you could, but like, good luck with that, you know.
He simply says the Equal Protection Clause allows states to do what they want to do to protect women. And as to the third case on campaign funding, Karl Rove, the architect,
we'll get to that,
had it exactly right. It strengthens parties. It makes parties much more vibrant. And so I think, from my perspective, it's 3-0 for the Constitution today. Now, I know some people, as a matter of policy that Professor Turley just put out, would like to amend the Constitution to change the citizenship to prevent against birthright citizenship. We can pass a law to tighten up visa. We can secure the border like President Trump has done. But the Constitution is pretty easy to understand. It was written by farmers for farmers. I like to tell that to my con law students every single year.
Yeah. I'm not surprised that Fox News would probably be pretty shocked. The people on Fox News would probably be pretty shocked if this had gone through as well. I just don't know. It's just it's genuinely insane, the idea that this was just one vote away. Kind of over a little bit. Big it's over vibes.